Okay, फिर मैं okay. Hello everyone, good morning and very welcome to Exam B. I hope I am very audible to you. So I am going to discuss important news related to economics, banking, finance, economic issues basically in this session today here. If you have any question, feel free to ask in the chat. And today morning you have already received the good news that PFRDA has come out with more vacancies now. And we have already made very detailed videos on this topic, that the PFRDA syllabus is actually matching very much with the SEBI syllabus. So right now you have opportunity to prepare for PFRDA, and with the same preparation you have opportunity also to crack SEBI grade exam later, and with the same pattern actually you will find whether it is RBI or IRDA or NABARD. If you are eligible for all these exams, please apply for regulatory body and all India financial institutions exams, and nothing like exam we can give you the preparation. We have this quarter end offer going on, so what is it better than today when the notification has come out with more vacancies, right? So yes, before I start with the news articles, and what I am going to do in this, I am going to share some questions, both MCQs and descriptive. You will understand how reading these newspaper article actually helps you in preparing for both objective and descriptive questions, must for cracking the exam. And because of this kind of strategy, we have selections in RBI, NABARD, SEBI, PFRDA, IRDA. We work a lot on our pedagogy because we provide content in recorded lessons and study note. Then we provide a lot of practice questions. You come to live class, ask any question, and then we do one-on-one mentoring sessions with you. We tell you not only your weaknesses but your strength to crack the exam. We have features like nobody else, mock test in exam hall mode, preparation based on the real exam questions. If you are not using PYP of exam B, please use it right away. We provide all level of questions and all level of classes, basic level, moderate level and high level. BPDA is free to download. Download it, because this session I will do, but still you will have to catch up a lot at your end, starting with this question. If you can answer this, that will be more helpful. Currently, what is one of the key concerns regarding the US dollar? These are the kind of things which are coming regularly in the articles. Another question, then I will show you from which article I am getting answer of this. What is the significance of Paris Climate Agreement in the context of economic cooperation? You may type your answer. There is a lag between my chat and your chat, so I am fine with that. You participate. What is the primary risk of excessive reliance on single global reserve currency like US dollar? And these things are being spoken very openly nowadays after the tariff war President Donald Trump has started. The answer is this: concern about mounting about the safety of US dollar dominated assets. If you see, if you are reading the foreign currency assets, whether it is of India or China, most of these are in USD, US dollar dominated assets. Significance of Paris Climate Agreement in the context of economic cooperation, because what is Paris Climate Agreement? So sometime in the exam it may be Paris Agreement simply. So you have to know that it is about the climate related policies which Mr. Trump had said they are not going to follow. So it is very strange, but that is what is happening right now. So there is a question on sustainable growth. What is the primary risk of excessive reliance on a single global reserve currency? That is the exposure to the policy decisions made by the US. US does something and we all are affected. This is an interesting article here from where you can get all the answers of such questions. If you are finding these are difficult questions, so I will tell you, you keep on reading such articles. For the benefit of time, I may not read it line by line, but let me tell you the highlighted part. Can Asia and Europe rescue the global economy? This is the article about. Because, see, first you read the heading. Then you will say, what is this? Asia and Europe rescuing the global economy. What does it mean? It means today the growth rate in US, the largest economy in the world, is very, very low. Countries around the world are confronting the same confluence of the shocks, the continued breakdown of the global trading system owing to the volatile US tariff policy started by Trump and also the conflict in West Asia. Moreover, concern about the safety of the dollar-dominated assets are growing. So this is the point I was telling about the dollar-dominated assets. Donald Trump's big, beautiful spending bill is expected to erode America's already weak fiscal position. Government in US has borrowed a lot. If you are finding this is a little bit difficult for you to digest, don't worry. You keep on reading, and I'm telling you, first day you may take half an hour to read one article, and after a week it will come down to 20 minutes. So you may be able to read then 2 articles. Okay. So this is going to be helpful, and it will. You have to build step by step. I will do few articles here today with questions, but you have to do more on a regular basis. Global supply chain are disrupted. Risk of climate and environmental breakdown has increased, especially now that the United States has withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement again. So this is the key point here, Paris Climate Agreement. If you don't know about Paris Climate Agreement, you now know that there is such agreement keeping the climate clean, environment clean and sustainable growth. So US has withdrawn from it. And that's it talks about the dollar dominated assets. Most of the countries have, that is their risk there. And the rule maker here is US, has become the rule breaker. These kind of keywords also help you in writing the descriptive exam. So this is about what kind of challenge US can face. It is even warning about bankruptcy, though I feel it is very, very remote in case of a government and a system like US, but still giving these warning signals are helpful. And also talking about the WTO, because US has actually one-sided withdrawn from most of the WTO guidelines which are agreed upon and promoted mostly by US earlier, right? So it is then talking about we shall have another currency, because right now it are or dollar dominated, and dollar dominated होने से जो US बोलता है वो सबको समझना पड़ता है. We have to work accordingly as per the US policies. US की policies affecting the global markets. Now this is another question. What does the term twin balance sheet problem refer to? Have you heard about this twin balance sheet problem? Twin balance sheet problem पता है आपको? So this is the term used about 1 decade back, means about 10-12 years back, about the problem of the Indian economy. And what is India's external balance sheet primarily supported by, as per this article is coming further. What is the inflation target for India? And I am giving you all these articles because in exam, especially a big grade B, you will find that there are paragraph based questions. You have a paragraph and then there are questions. So this is a very nice article written by Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister, summarizing the achievement of the government in last 11 years. From twin balance sheet problem to 5 balance sheet advantage. So twin balance sheet problem. So if you read economic survey of about 2014-15 somewhere, or 13-14, so India pointed out about twin balance sheet problem. One is the weak balance sheet of corporates and weak balance sheet of the financial institutions, mainly bank in India. So both are weak. So that was the twin balance sheet problem. Here in this article, Madam has mentioned from that situation 11 years back, we have come to a situation where we have these two balance sheet are stronger, but in addition to that, there are three more points she had mentioned. One is external situation, our forex reserve, that is the external situation, our current account deficit which has come down. Fourthly, the government balance sheet, because today the fiscal deficit has come down. So she had mentioned about that. That is a big achievement, that the government balance sheet is also stronger. And then she had mentioned about one more. Yeah, this is external household balance sheet. Fifth one is household balance sheet, means people are able to use money for use their saving for investment, or maybe using the borrowing for creation of the physical assets, which is again helping economy. In detail, a lot of important data is about the resilience of the banking sector, the growth, fiscal indicators. During the COVID time, fiscal deficit increased, but now it has come very, very well within the range. In fact, below the expectations of the market. India's rating has improved. Overall, there is India a bright spot in the global economic growth. That is what IMF also says. Interesting article. So this is the answer here. Weak finances of bank and corporate, twin balance sheet. And India's balance sheet is dominated by service export and remittance and FDI. If you read these kind of articles, you will not miss the important thing, right? Because service export, IT export, remittances, our people are working abroad. Lot many Indians are working abroad and they send money from there. Foreign direct investment is coming in India because India is a growing economy. So these three things actually keep our external balance sheet stronger. That is the advantage of actually reading these kind of newspaper article news, important news, so that you don't miss the important data. Otherwise, if you just keep on reading data, you won't realize which one is most important. This question actually is more confusing because the option C says inflation target 2 to 6%, and many of you are going to do that in the exam, which is wrong. Because the target given to RBI for inflation management is 4% plus minus 2%. है ही नहीं, मतलब 2 to 6 is wrong. But if this option is not there, suppose option D is not there, then you can go for option C also, otherwise go for option D. Now this is another interesting one. What percentage has the RBI reduced the PSL target, priority sector lending target, for a small finance bank? In fact, yesterday I made a video showing that this is there in the RBI circular, but I am encouraging you to read these news articles rather than going to the RBI circular. You may understand well why I am saying that. Which of the following is not mentioned as a segment where a small finance bank may deploy funds post relaxation? So relaxation of the PSL guideline. And according to, this is another the same article actually. So how many small finance banks are there and how many of them have applied for converting it to universal bank? I don't think any document otherwise is going to update you about these important things which are important for exam. So here, in case of a small finance bank, what is the one benefit of the PSL relaxation, priority sector lending relaxation, which RBI has given? What is one benefit? So you read this article here. A small finance bank may de-risk, diversify loan book. When RBI came out with this circular, that the priority sector lending target for a small finance bank had been reduced from 75% to 60%. See, this is how the news starts here, that this is reduced. But what is important is the implication of this, which you will not find in RBI circular, right? So the implication will provide operational flexibility to these lenders, enabling them to diversify and de-risk their loan book by venturing into the segment they had previously stayed away from. This will free up around 40,000 crore rupees for a small finance bank to lend. I am not asking again to remember this number. This 40,000 crore will not be asked in the exam, but the guideline, and also when you are writing the descriptive part, that time it will be helpful to make a case that how a small finance bank, earlier microfinance companies, most of them, and then becoming a small finance bank, some of them applying to universal bank now. If you will have question in between, what is a universal bank? Google it or ask ChatGPT or ask us in the class. You will get to know the answers of all this. These are important terminologies which are used in such articles. So now these small finance bank can channel funds into the segment like LAP, loan against property, personal loan, vehicle loan, loans against mutual funds. This is going to make their profitability better. If you are again following the market or maybe news next day, you will realize that next day most of these small finance banks share price increased, because this is a good news for these banks. It gives them more optional freedom and more opportunities to earn, opportunities to even become small, the universal bank. Next question, what was the reason cited for US delaying the increase in tariffs on Chinese goods? So there is a trade war going between China and US. So what is the reason mentioned in this article? And I encourage reading these kind of articles regularly, because these are important economic activities happening and these kind of questions will be asked in the exam. अगर ये नहीं पढ़ेंगे तो फिर क्या पढ़ेंगे, right? So if you see again in this article, the discussion is about US-China agreement offers little hope. This is about 15-20 days old article. So US first said no, I will have these many 55% tariff on China, but then they have delayed it, and there is some discussion going on. So there is some hope. That is what the article talks about, and also talks about the ability of China to negotiate it, because China also has a lot in its kitty. One is, it is very important trade partner. Without the supply of so many material from China, it will be difficult even for US. And secondly, China has some important items like rare earth material. That is again coming in the news, right? So significant progress was made. That was the reason. And this is the second part of the same article, that US is also dependent on China. US is also dependent on China. China has imposed a licensing requirement for export for several rare earth elements and raised tariff on US import in response of the Liberation Day tariff increase. The US responded by imposing 145% tariff on Chinese import. Much of it has now been reversed. However, it is unclear whether the announced tariff rate between US and China will be final. What is clear that the world two largest economies, number one is US, number two is China, are dependent on each other far more than the Trump administration is willing to recognize. Besides, the Chinese appear to have upper hand because their dominant control of the supply chain of the rare earth elements. So China is not going to agree to US terms so easily, and it is not easy for US also. Again, here in this article, if you see, recently projected that US economic growth would slow down to 1.8%. We discussed that about in a previous article. So current year the US economic growth is almost going to half of last year, which was 2.8%. That is a concern. So the other article was telling about how Asia and Europe can actually help by having growth. We saw one article by Madam Sitaraman in which the government's efforts of last 11 years were summarized and telling that the things are going good. But this article is just opposite, or maybe a contrast to that, gives another opinion that rate cut, RBI has reduced the repo rate, CRR. How much impact is that? So that news is always covered. See, news, it may be a revision for you that RBI reduced the repo rate by 50 bps to 5.5% and CRR by 100 bps, 25 bps in each. It will be done in 4 tranches and total 2.5 trillion will be injected in the system. But will this bring the growth? This article is questioning that, saying no, it won't, because there are structural issues in the economy. There are bigger problems. This money can fuel the demand, but the problem is not the demand side. The problem is the structural issues in the economy. Then you are thinking, what are the structural issues? Don't worry, you can ask the GPT if you don't know, or you can ask the Google. But these kind of contrast, what are the important elements of the economic growth? So it talks about the private consumption expenditure, which is very, very important. In our case, nearly 60% of the India GDP coming from this. And then the second important aspect is about the growth. So it says the growth looks like doing well, but it is not, because if you see the growth in case of the merchandise, it is very, very poor. So it gives the number which fell in last year, and net exports here are negative. And when we have no control over import, how we are going to maintain the export competitiveness? Third driver of the growth is just talking about the capex. The private capex is actually declining. So government capex is there, but how long it is going to continue? And this year there is a decline in the government capex also. And these are the structural problems this article has highlighted. If I need to tell you what are the structural issues and what are the cyclical issues, so you have to find it out. Actually, we can discuss there, because these are important in the economy. So cyclical issues are short-term issues. These are because of the business cycle. But structural issues are long-term issues. So structural issues is, if we give another example, a child, a kid got a fever, बुखार आ गया किसी को, सीजनल है वो, तो दैट यू कैन ए साइक्लिकल इशू. अगर कोई माल न्यूट्रिशन है, अब बचपन से उसे खाना ही नहीं मिल रहा है, वो 4 साल से बेचारा मतलब एनी हाउ सर्वाइविंग, so that becomes a structural issue in the economy. So economy has structural issue like lack of education, health care, unemployment problem. So all these structural issues are not going to be managed by rate cut of RBI. What does the article suggest about effectiveness of the rate cut? So these are the questions then you have to do based on these important articles. क्या questions हो सकते हैं? So they cannot shift the economy's growth gear, right? What are the largest contributor of the India GDP as mentioned here? We discussed this just now, private consumption expenditure. What kind of issues in India facing with its current GDP growth? So I just mentioned about that there are structural issues, not cyclical issues. So cyclical issues are short-term issues as we just discussed, and structural issues are deep-rooted problems which are supply-side inefficiencies, cannot be fixed by these shortcuts of the rate cut. So for fiscal or monetary policy will not help here. It will rather require long-term reform, providing education, infrastructure, governance, labor laws, ease of doing business. We have to improve on all that. Now, before we go to a few more MCQs, descriptive question. Examine how the RBI recent rate cut and liquidity measures have attempted to stimulate economic growth. Why are these efforts considered insufficient in addressing India's structural growth challenges? If you have read that kind of article which I just shared, you will be able to write a fantastic answer. I am sharing a model answer here like this. The first paragraph summarizes what measure RBI has taken and what is the impact of it. Almost a fact-based point. Second paragraph explains how these things help. So the rate cut by RBI is a expansionary monetary policy, and when RBI has changed the stance from accommodative to neutral, so how this is going to help and how MSME sector is going to help. So this explains that in normal situation how rate cut helps in the growth. But now the but starts, because the question is, read the question again, why these efforts considered insufficient? You have to always read the question in parts and answer every part. I am telling you this tip, and many more tips we keep on giving in the sessions. You have to follow and learn. Okay. So here, however, these efforts are often deemed insufficient in taking up the structural issues. Rate cut, while useful in addressing short-term cyclical slowdowns, cannot resolve long-term supply chain bottleneck. Then further explain another issue is private consumption, which is not addressed. Thirdly, India economy faces structural issues like low labor productivity, skill mismatch, underdeveloped infrastructure, regulatory inefficiencies. These require long-term policy and government reforms. In education, ease of doing business, labor law, judicial processes which lie outside the central bank's purview, RBI's purview. Therefore, last paragraph, you have to conclude. Writing is an art. It requires knowledge. If you see in this, the data is very, very limited. Very, very limited data. So most of the time when we start writing, we feel if I put a lot of data in my answer will become impressive, which is not, because the evaluation is done based on your ability to understand the issue and put forward some suggestion, put forward an argument. Next descriptive question that I will just show a model answer, and you may take the screenshot and study it well. In what ways can the improved financial health of banks, corporate and the government translate into long-term sustainable economic growth? So if you recall, this answer comes from the article which Madam Sitaraman has written about the stronger balance sheet. So from twin balance sheet to 5 balance sheet, see the way the answer is written. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, furthermore, and conclusion. So an introduction, point 1, 2, 3, 4, and conclusion. If you start writing like this, then you will definitely succeed. I will do 5 quick questions and then you have to do more. Now you are thinking whether this kind of question can also be there in a news article. When was the first regional rural bank established in India? Of course, my dear, I will show you how it is coming. What is the ownership structure of RRBs in terms of the shareholding? And mind you, very, very important point, there is so much of theory. But do you know what kind of questions are asked in the exam, which are recently in discussion? Today, RRBs are in discussion because government has announced one state, one RRB. This is the article about regional rural bank helping India's growth story. How they are created, October 275, first RRB, Prathama Bank, headquartered in Moradabad. This is the shareholding structure, except in Goa and Sikkim. That will come in exam, I don't know. So I have taken only few questions. And what are their challenges, but what are the opportunities? Everything covered very, very well in the article. So you will not only understand about RRB, you will also understand about the rural financing, which RRBs do. And we just discussed 75% priority sector lending for RRB. It was same for a small finance bank, which is reduced to 60%. Now, this article is about amber light flashing. It is about basically microfinance institutions where RBI has come out with a sympathetic view. That is, see, RBI circular you will read, you will just know what is the change. No, RBI circular will never use the word like sympathetic view. How this change of, what is the change? Change is lowering the qualifying asset threshold to a minimum of 60% from 75% earlier. So this is the change. How this change is going to help microfinance institution, and what are the challenges of microfinance institutions? What are the good things also? So quite in detail, if you don't know even microfinance institution, you will understand that microfinance is a loan of maximum 2 lakh rupees and one borrower can get maximum from 4 institutions. These are again important exam questions. What is the previous requirement? That MFI has to ensure at least 75% of their assets were held in form of qualifying microfinance loans meeting the RBI criteria like small ticket size, low income borrowers and no collateral. Now this is reduced to 60%. So 40% of the lending they can do maybe other lending, which is maybe personal loan or maybe some housing loan. So they will still be called microfinance institutions. So this is important because it is allowing them more flexibility. It is also reducing the concentration risk. Otherwise, the microfinance company's portfolio is completely unsecured, all in group lending of SHG and JLG. It encourages the sustainability of these institutions. These are the answers now. Okay, are you still interested or shall I stop it here? I am not getting any response. Chalo, theek hai, I will stop it fast. So what is the ownership structure is? You know, 50% central government, 15% state, and 35% is the sponsor bank, which is a commercial bank. Revised qualifying criteria 60% we just discussed, and key objective of this is to reduce stress by allowing diversification in and reducing the concentration risk. Last two questions. What is dumping in the context of international trade? So what is dumping? The word dumping. If you know the word dumping, maybe you can make it out. Dumping is what? And the next one? Yeah, dumping is exporting goods at a price below their fair market value. Okay. This is the article. So this article tells about India's overzealous anti-dumping response. Because of the tariff wars, so many dumping means India has been using these anti-dumping measures to protect Indian businesses. The article says India is actually one of the countries which has used these anti-dumping duties quite high, quite large number of times. So that is not correct. That is not really going to help Indian businesses. So this is suggesting that India shall use it very, very judiciously. Right? India shall use it very, very judiciously, because Indian policy makers, see, I am going to this, Indian policy makers should use anti-dumping duties carefully and only when backed by strong evidence. If you see, if you don't know, in international trade, dumping occurs when a country sells goods abroad at a price lower than the fair market value. While the World Trade Organization does not consider dumping unfair, by default, it allows countries to impose anti-dumping duties if the practice causes material injury to the local industries. Okay. So this is the question. India used it to protect the domestic industries. What does the article suggest about the anti-dumping duties effect in micro, small and medium enterprises? So this article suggests about MSME, anti-dumping duties hurt MSMEs due to higher input cost and limited lobbying power. So sometimes we may do it to protect our MSMEs, but it may hurt them. Say in case of import from China, MSME is also using a lot of raw materials coming from China, rather intermediate goods you can say. So their business is also affected. Now I will show some of the articles to you so that you understand the kind of the coverage you can have by these articles. This is about G7 deadlock, and then we close the session for today. You can ask the questions in chat today or later. I am not able to read all the questions for the interest of time. This one is about the empowering farmers. What kind of agriculture reforms can be used using drones, using technology, using SHGs, because agriculture still employs more than 50% of our population. This article is very interesting one about the credible carbon market, written by Mr. Ajay Tyagi, who is a former SEBI chairman. So the Indian credit carbon market we are building is expected to begin in 2026. He has discussed about the nuances of it, how it is going to help the industries which are not making pollution, and it will increase their profitability but create certain challenges also. This one is about the tussle between dollar and renminbi. We know that Donald Trump is in no mood to leave the dominance of the dollar. Of course, he will not be, but at the same time, people are now talking about what is the alternate for dollar. This addresses that concern, though what China is doing in that. This one is very interesting if you understand something what the Fed does and what is happening in the Fed. Fed has become today very, very important, because what Fed does in United States is affecting everyone, because we are so interconnected, and as we discussed about the importance of USD. So in United States, there is a tussle going on between President Trump and US Fed Chairman Powell, though they are having their own tussle. So he is saying that Fed is as confused as rest of us because Fed is not able to really take decisions, and that is affecting us also. A good one if you have that much of understanding. Otherwise, sometimes these kind of difficult one you can leave. This is about the RBI's rate cut, front load rate cut to boost growth. So you will be able to understand what exactly RBI did, what is the change in the stance from accommodative to neutral, कैसे इसका affect आता है, how this is going to help, and the comment by the industry expert also, it will help you in understanding from the market perspective also. Because just reading कि RBI ने repo rate कम कर दिया, you won't be able to answer all the questions. That is just the beginning. So you have to read all this for your interview preparation, for your descriptive exam, of course for objective. SEBI has eased regulations for startup listing. What are the changes? Again discussed here. Indian universities are gaining ground. So this says about our top education institutes are becoming better. There is some ranking about the gross involvement ratio and how India's 54 institutions making their way in the list of this QS World University ranking. So but more is required. That is also covered here. It is not enough. So this kind of important data about health and education you shall have in mind. Good show by bank, but challenges ahead. So it is telling about the public sector bank have actually fared very well, and if you compare the structure is public sector, so these are government owned. Despite of that, they are actually doing better than their peers maybe in private sector. Some of them deeper understanding of the banking sector. This is about the labor productivity, again very important. We discussed about the structural issues in the economy. तो करना क्या है भाई, अब सॉल्व कैसे होगा? How these structural issues will be addressed? These two are working with Niti Aayog. So very thoroughly they have discussed about the challenges of the labor market and what we can do. Don't get nervous. हाँ, सारा कुछ नहीं पढ़ना है, ठीक है? तो because in answer also you can really write everything, but some bits and pieces here and there you will read and you will be able to incorporate in your answers and you will make it impressive. तो मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ कि जब तक आप ये सारे आर्टिकल नहीं पढ़ोगे सिलेक्शन नहीं होगा, बट अगर आप बिल्कुल नहीं पढ़ोगे तब तो नहीं होगा. That is the keyword. Okay, so some of you will be able to understand more, some less. एग्जाम निकलता है, but this will broaden your understanding. Neck to neck, कैसे US interest rate and Indian interest rate are coming very neck to neck. RBI, how RBI actually does. So in theory, in the course, you will understand repo, variable repo, but actually RBI does that. When RBI does that, so all these news, this data is not to be remembered at all. These news will help you in understanding that. This is about the emergency news edited by Business Standard on the 50th anniversary of the emergency. Some important terms I have explained here. Shifting gear, government in fact rather than disinvesting PSUs is investing them. So this is another important article and it will give you perspective कि यार कहाँ privatization हो रहा है. So some people keep on asking ना बैंक privatize हो जाएंगे. This article is saying कि rather government has actually invested more. If you see the data, privatization तो छोड़ो, privatization बोला government ने है, but किया नहीं है. This is saying that government has actually given more in the public sector, more equity. India must not squander its demographic potential. This is telling about India's demographic dividend. We have a young population, but यूटिलाइज कहाँ हो रहा है वो. तो ये तो बहुत ही अच्छा आर्टिकल है. आई हैव टाइम चैलेंज राइट नाउ. India's economic activity resilient among the global peer. This is from RBI bulletin that trade policy uncertainties pose major risk. This you will keep on hearing because of the trade policy issues we started by Donald Trump. This is about PMJDY2, which will come soon with more features. Public sector bank outplace private peers in issuance of CD. ये मैंने केवल इसलिए रखा कि आपको पता तो लगे यार CD इशू सच्ची में करते भी है और CD करता कौन इशू है. नहीं तो आप CD और CP में कंफ्यूज ही रहोगे, right? Certificate of deposit and commercial paper. RBI extended call money market. Again to know that these things happen which we otherwise just studied in theory. This one little deeper one shall read. अगर आप बाद में देखोगे तो इसको पॉज करके पढ़ लेना. How WTO is still relevant today or how it has to be relevant today, and mutual fund में क्या issues हैं, more useful for SEBI exam, VRR का again some what is happening in the market. So I will stop it here. Please download the iExamB app. Please download Freebiepedia so that you can take best advantage of the RBI, the Bpedia for RBI preparation for all regulatory body exam. Right now you have PFRDA notification. Utilize this opportunity and utilize the opportunity of month end and quarter end discount also. Let me now have a quick look at your questions, then I will close the session. Which newspaper is good? So see, newspaper wise, don't worry, all newspapers are equally good. So I don't have any love for one single one, whether it is Economics Times or Financial Express or Business Standard. So here I showed you Business Standard, but you can read any economics or financial newspaper. Don't love any normal newspaper, because the focus on all these financial newspaper is on the news of finance, economics and banking, which is very, very important if you really want to make a career in the regulatory bodies and financial institutions, right? Just don't depend on a normal newspaper, because there lot of politics is discussed, which is not actually required in any of these exams. So you go for a business newspaper, like I have used today Business Standard, but it can be any one, Economics Times, Mint, or Financial Express, Business Line, not a normal newspaper, because business newspaper, financial newspaper changes the way you think, changes the way you look at the headline, changes the way you ask questions to yourself, because you will get lot many arguments, counter arguments, lot many points to talk about. Right, so with this, let's stop it here. Thank you guys for your attention, and join iExam before 50% faster preparation. Thank you.